Which phone has the best battery life among flagship phones right now? The phones that are coming out have two things that give them a much longer battery life than the previous generation: the new efficient 3nm chipset and the latest battery technology that lets them have a higher capacity without sacrificing size and weight. We have 4 contestants today. IQOO 13, one of the most affordable A-Elite phones out there running Origin OS. OnePlus 13, running Color OS. Vivo X200 Pro, which is crowned as the phone of the year on this channel, with Dimensity 9400 and Origin OS. And Apple A18 Pro, which before the new phones had the best battery life among flagship phones running iOS on the A18 Pro chipset. For the first test, I put all the phones on the same 5G connection and I ran YouTube videos for around an hour. All phones are running on standard battery mode, and I set the brightness with lux meter to be the same using a white background. All Android phones run the app that I wrote to measure battery life and temperature, which you can always check in the top right corner. But I don't have this app for iOS. Around half an hour into the test, the IQOO battery temperature was still below 30 degrees Celsius, which is 83 degrees Fahrenheit. But OnePlus and Vivo had already gone above that. OnePlus had already lost 2%, while all the other phones were still at 100%. But this could simply be due to battery calibration. I continued YouTube for another half an hour. By the end of the test, the display surface temperature of IQOO and OnePlus was similar. Vivo was 1 degree hotter and iPhone was the coolest at only 25 degrees Celsius, which is crazy low. This phone doesn't even get warm when watching YouTube. By the end of this part of the test, IQOO had 96%, OnePlus had 94%, Vivo had 96%, and iPhone had 99% battery left. The next part of the test is going to be outdoors. I'm going to track my walk with Komoot and turn on the GPS while all phones are connected to 5G. It is a sunny winter day outside, and I also put the phone to capture a video for around 10 minutes. For some reason, the IQOO video was a bit foggy even though I checked and there were no smudges on the glass. I'm not sure why this happened. By the time I finished taking the video, IQOO had 90%, OnePlus had 88%, and Vivo had 89% battery left, while iPhone had 93%. Then I took some photos and got back home. Let's take a quick look at the photos. Here, I zoomed around 20 times into the subject. The photo on IQOO is a bit disappointing. The one on OnePlus is more acceptable, but a bit blurry. Vivo did wonders and took an amazing photo. iPhone is the second best, in my opinion, in this shot, but the processing is not great. Both IQOO and Vivo make the color of the church better. Here, I again used the telephoto lens, but this time from a closer subject. All phones did a relatively good job. IQOO is the only one that lacks details in this image. Sorry, I just love telephoto pictures, so here's another one with 25x zoom on iPhone. Here, IQOO didn't do great, but the subject is also really far, and I could not see the bird with my own eyes. OnePlus and iPhone did a relatively good job, but the best is again Vivo X200 Pro. The main lens during daylight won't give you different results. There are some small differences in processing, but overall, you get nice looking pictures on all 4 phones. Here, I took a telephoto macro shot. On IQOO, I used the main lens. The amount of bokeh on Vivo is better compared to the iPhone and OnePlus. I also prefer the shot on OnePlus compared to the iPhone. The greens are deeper and I like the overall look. For the next part, I'm going to run the 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme Stress Test. I also connected all phones to Wi-Fi. This test runs a loop 20 times and puts the chipset under heavy load. IQOO was the first phone to reach 40 degrees Celsius, which is 106 degrees Fahrenheit. OnePlus stayed cooler for longer and also dimmed the screen when it got to the same temperature, while OnePlus reached 45 degrees and IQOO got to around 50 degrees. I was worried that it wouldn't finish the test due to thermal warning. On the other hand, IQOO 13 got a better lowest score compared to OnePlus 13, but at the expense of pushing the phone through the benchmark. Now IQOO has 68%, OnePlus has 66%, Vivo has 71%, and iPhone has 75% battery left. Then, I made all phones call each other via Google Meet while staying on Wi-Fi. After half an hour, the temperature on OnePlus was the best among Android phones. None of them had any connection issues, and none got hotter than an acceptable amount. Again, the display temperature of the iPhone is amazingly low. It is only 33 degrees Celsius, which is 2 degrees cooler than OnePlus. the coolest Android phone. The efficiency of the iPhone 16 Pro Max is unmatched. I continued the test, and after an hour and a half Google Meet, all of the phones stayed relatively cool, showing that even for demanding day-to-day tasks, you don't need to worry about thermals and battery drain on the new Vivo flagship phones. By the end of the test, IQOO had 45%, OnePlus had 45%, Vivo had 46%, and iPhone had 54% battery left. Then I ran the selfie camera to record at 1080p and 30 frames per second. The reason I didn't record in 4K is that the IQOO selfie camera is limited to 1080p. After around 15 minutes, all Android phones had around 41-42% battery left, while the iPhone had 48% battery left. I then ran the Aquarium benchmark, which is based on WebGL, and by the end of the test, IQOO and OnePlus had 29% battery left, Vivo had 30%, and the iPhone 16 Pro Max had 33% battery left. I also decided to play Genshin Impact for 20 minutes. The way that I've done it is that I played for 20 minutes with each phone, starting from IQOO to iPhone 16 Pro Max. All of the phones were set to max setting and 60 frames per second. I didn't experience the phones getting hot. The max temperature was always below 40 degrees Celsius, which is around 104 degrees Fahrenheit, throughout the whole test. Like in the previous test, the only phone that had visible frame drops was the iPhone. I really wonder why the iPhone and Genshin Impact on max settings are not working very well, as there are frame drops here and there, especially towards the end of the test. By the end of the Genshin Impact test, the IQOO 13 had 20%, OnePlus 13 had 21%, Vivo had 22%, and the iPhone had 24% battery left. The race between Android phones is close, but the iPhone is doing better than the rest of the pack. Now I'm going to put all the phones in a standby mode and go to sleep. Right now, all 4 phones have around 5 hours and 12 hours of screen on time with a mix of 5G and Wi-Fi connections. I turned on the phones 12 hours later, and the IQOO 13 was at 14%. The OnePlus 13 and Vivo X200 Pro were at 17%, and the iPhone had 19% battery left. For the finale, I again started Google Meets, but this time on 5G instead of Wi-Fi. All Android phones had similar temperatures throughout the call. After 5 hours and 26 minutes, IQOO was the first phone to give a 10% warning. In its defense, it was also working much harder during the Genshin Impact and 3D Mark test to give better frames per second. Right after that, both OnePlus and Vivo dropped under 10%, while the iPhone stayed above. The match between these 4 titans is extremely close. Right before the 6 hours mark, IQOO dropped to 1%, while the other 3 phones were at 3%. At 5 hours and 59 minutes, right before the 6 hours mark, the IQOO 13 left the chat, and the other 3 phones all had only 2% battery left. The iPhone tried to be sneaky and dimmed the screen, but I turned it back on. On one hand, it is super exciting that a phone with a much smaller battery capacity is competing shoulder to shoulder with the others. But on the other hand, the iPhone does a lot of software tricks to optimize for better battery life. After 6 hours and 5 minutes, the iPhone 16 Pro Max was the second phone to run out of juice and left the chat. Just 2 minutes later, the OnePlus 13 also gave a low battery warning, and at 6 hours and 8 minutes, it left the chat, making the Vivo X200 Pro the last phone standing. This is on par with my real-life battery test too, where Vivo consistently got better battery results compared to the iPhone and OnePlus. That's why in my Best Phone of the Year awards, I crowned it as the Phone of the Year. The Vivo X200 Pro pushed for that 1% a few minutes longer and finally gave up at 6 hours and 30 minutes. So officially, the Vivo X200 Pro is currently the best flagship phone for both battery life and camera performance based on my tests. The OnePlus 13 is a close second, the iPhone 16 Pro Max is a close third, and IQOO is a close fourth. In general, you won't notice a big difference between these 4 phones, and depending on your usage, you may find one of them lasting longer than the rest. Also, not every single production unit has the exact battery capacity, as they usually vary by a small percentage. You may also be interested in finding out which phone has better performance. I did a detailed comparison of the OnePlus 13 versus Vivo X200 Pro versus iPhone 16 Pro Max to test the performance of these devices, which you can watch next. Thanks for tuning in to TechMo, and I will see you in the next one.